My name is Anna, and this is the story of the moment I truly understood that I had never genuinely belonged within my own family. I attended my Candace, Sister Lena's wedding with modest expectations, to smile for a few photos, offer congratulations, and play the familiar part of the gracious, older sister, just as I always had. The venue was a lakeside resort tucked into the lush beauty of Vermont, famed for its floral gardens and extravagant banquet halls with towering glass ceilings that let in golden afternoon light. As my car rolled to a stop at the entrance gate, a sharply dressed attendant stepped forward and opened the door for me. I paused, took a calming breath, smoothed down the wine-colored dress I had carefully chosen, one of the few that felt appropriate for such a grand occasion, and stepped out with a composed smile. I had no intention of drawing attention to myself. This day was meant for Lena. I paused past Amai. I had made peace long ago with the fact that I was never the child they doted on. But what I hadn't anticipated was just how coldly they would treat me. The moment I entered the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a bright, professional smile. "May I have your name, please?" she asked. "Anna Whitemore," I answered, keeping my voice low and polite. Her smile faltered ever so slightly. I saw a flicker of hesitation flash across her perfectly powdered face. She flicked through the guest list at a noticeably quicker pace before her finger paused and she looked up. "Ah, yes. You've been placed in the hallway section," she said. I blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, where exactly?" "Just outside the banquet room, near the coat check area," she responded, attempting a breezy tone as if it were perfectly normal. My eyes moved to the seating chart posted nearby. There, clearly marked, were my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Whitemore, assigned to seats at the head table. Lena's close friends, her husband's colleagues, all had prime spots inside under the crystal chandeliers. I scanned every column. My name wasn't listed anywhere within the hall. "Maybe there's a mistake," I said calmly, trying to suppress the rising sting in my chest. The receptionist offered another smile, this one noticeably stiffer. "I'm afraid not. That's the assigned location." A slow heat bloomed in my chest. Maybe the banquet hall had run out of space. Perhaps it was just a last-minute oversight. I wanted to believe that, until I saw my mother standing beside Lena, adjusting her veil with such care and tenderness. They were laughing, holding on to each other as if everything was perfect. I walked over and steadied my voice. "Mom, could I speak with you for just a moment?" My mother, Diana, didn't even glance in my direction. "Anna, not now. Can't you see we're in the middle of something?" "Just a minute," I pressed. She sighed, clearly irritated, but reluctantly stepped aside. Lena didn't move, watching me with a tight-lipped smile that held no warmth. "I've been seated in the hallway," I said plainly. My mother shrugged, like it was barely worth addressing. We had to prioritize close family. You know how that works. I clenched my hands. "But I am close family." She let out a light, dismissive laugh. "Don't turn this into something dramatic, Anna." Lena joined in, her voice syrupy but her expression sharp. "I'm sure it was just a simple oversight. These events get chaotic, you know. No one meant to hurt you." Despite the sugary tone, her words sliced. I turned again to my mother, hoping for even the smallest show of regret, but all she offered was a sigh. "Please don't ruin your sister's big day. You should be thankful you were invited at all." The word thankful hit me like a blow. Thankful for being treated like a second-class guest. Thankful for being placed beside a coat rack while the rest of my family sat beneath chandeliers. Before I could answer, my father, Richard, approached. His voice was low and rushed, as if trying to smooth the tension rather than solve it. "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it into something more." I stood there silently. My anger didn't come as fire. It came as ice. Cold and quiet. I forced a hollow smile and turned away. They believed I would swallow it, like I always had. They assumed I'd stay silent and play along. But not this time. I walked away from the main room, each click of my heels echoing against the marble floor. The hallway smelled of expensive floral arrangements and something else, something wrong, something like me, out of place. In my hand, I still held the place card. Anna Whitemore, Table H, hallway area. The elegant lettering felt like mockery. I turned it over slowly, my palm damp. I had hoped, just this once, they might see me as one of them, but it was painfully clear they never had. A soft click echoed behind me. The door to the banquet hall opened. "Anna," Lena called out. Her voice was light, as if nothing were wrong, but enough to make me stop. I turned to face her. She stood framed in the doorway, arms crossed, her veil lifting slightly in the breeze. Her makeup was pristine. Her smile was anything but kind. "Are you upset about something?" she asked, voice feigning curiosity. "Is this because of the seating?" A short laugh escaped my lips, dry and exhausted. "No, I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed." Lena tilted her head, her eyes glimmering like she'd just heard a joke. "You're always so emotional. It's just a seat, Anna." "Why do you care so much?" I bit down gently on the inside of my cheek to steady my voice. "You know it's never been about a seat. It's about how I've been treated by this family. It's always been that way." She gave a lazy shrug. "And yet, here you are, dressed up, hoping someone would finally notice." She took a step forward, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "You crave their approval so badly. It's honestly a little sad." I looked her straight in the eyes. "What's sad, Lena, is that you need to put someone else down to feel like you matter." That gave her pause. Just for a moment. But then she laughed, lightly, carelessly, like my words meant nothing. As her laughter faded, we both heard footsteps behind her. Our mother appeared, her face tight with frustration, as if someone had pulled her away from something far more important than this. "I'm hearing there's a scene happening out here," she asked, addressing Lena. She barely acknowledged my presence. I took a breath, willing myself to stay grounded, to speak clearly. "Mom, I was seated in the hallway. I'm not just some distant guest. I'm your daughter." Her brow furrowed. She gave a small, forced smile. "Anna, it's not that I don't care about you. It's just the seats inside were limited. I had to give priority to those who are well closer. I didn't move." "What do you mean by closer?" "To Lena," she replied quickly. "Aunt Lauren, her best friend from college, the people who were there when she was ill. You've always been the independent one. I never had to worry about you." Her words came out with such ease, as if they justified everything. A quiet laugh escaped me, so soft it surprised even myself. "You never had to worry about me," I said, my voice low, "and somehow that gives you permission to treat me like I was never even here." Lena cut in quickly, her tone sticky, sweet. "Anna, stop it. Mom didn't mean anything cruel. You're overreacting. Honestly, you should be grateful you were even invited." That line sank like a stone. Grateful. I turned to my mother, looking at her not as my parent, but as a stranger I was seeing for the first time. "Do you have any idea how grateful sounds coming from someone who's made me feel like an outsider in my own family?" She said nothing. No apology, no touch of comfort, not even a hug. Then, from my left, came my father's voice, deep, familiar, and detached. "It's just a seat." And it was Richard. He stood there holding a glass, his eyes trained on the floor as though facing me would demand too much. I turned slowly. "I don't need you to take my side," I said, every word measured. "But you could at least look me in the eye while you dismiss me." He did glance up, briefly. His expression flickered with uncertainty, but it faded just as quickly. Lena gave an exaggerated shrug, like a teacher tolerating a difficult child. "If you're this upset, maybe you should just go. No one's forcing you to stay." I looked at them. All three of them. The people I had once called my family. And suddenly, something in me shifted. Maybe Lena was right. I clutched my purse strap a little tighter and took a long, steady breath. Something inside me fractured, not from hurt, but from clarity. A realization that trying to fit into a place I was never welcomed only chipped away at me. If they had silently agreed that I didn't belong, then I wouldn't keep asking for room at their table. And what I was about to do would make sure they remembered this night for the rest of their lives. I walked quickly down the corridor, the thick carpet muffling the sound of my heels. The hallway swallowed me in its silence, even as the banquet hall behind me buzzed with joy, laughter, the clink of silverware, music rising like a celebration I was never invited to. At a quiet corner near the window, I stopped. My hand clenched around the strap of my purse, the only thing tethering me in place. My mind whirled with faces, Lena's smug grin, Mom's cool dismissal, Dad's empty, silence all swirling like a melody out of tune. And then, out of nowhere, a memory resurfaced. So vivid, it felt like it was unfolding in front of me again. It was 3 years earlier, Thanksgiving. Lena had been off traveling through Portugal with a new boyfriend, so for once, she wasn't there. The house in Albany felt unusually calm, no perfume clouds, no loud laughs echoing through the halls. Mom had asked me to head to my old bedroom to look for some family photos for a memory album she was putting together. I agreed, feeling oddly relieved to be part of something meaningful. My room hadn't changed. The narrow bed by the window, the worn bookshelf, and framed photos from high school, mostly of me, mostly alone. As I dug through the bottom drawer for the box of pictures, my gaze wandered, landed on the small drawer of Mom's vanity. I don't know why I opened it. Something just pulled me. Inside, resting neatly, was a leather-bound notebook. Light brown, worn, quiet. Each page was filled with Mom's writing, elegant and precise, crowned with careful loops and curves. I flipped it open without thinking. The first line hit like a cold wind. The first day Lena went to kindergarten. She didn't cry. She turned and waved at me, then ran into the classroom like a brave little doll. I turned the next page. Lena loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Lena used to be scared of thunderstorms, but now she's much braver. Her favorite birthday gift was the nurse outfit I gave her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year. Every entry a monument to Lena. It read like a private memoir, one meant only for her. Suddenly, I was flipping faster, searching, desperately trying to find some trace of myself in those pages. A mention, a sentence, even just my name, but there was nothing, not a word, not a single line about Anna. My fingers gripped the Mace journal so hard my knuckles blanched white. Now. I stayed there, sitting on the floor, unmoving. The notebook wide open in my lap when Mom walked in. "You wrote all of this for Lena?" I asked, my voice thin and cold. She glanced at the pages and smiled like it was nothing. I had to. So Lena wouldn't feel forgotten. "She's sensitive." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. "And what about me?" She looked at me, unblinking. "You were always strong. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded then, said nothing more. But something inside cracked, a piece of my childhood, maybe, or a thread of hope I hadn't realized I was still clinging to. The part of me that just wanted my mother to see me. Now, standing in the wedding hallway under crystal lights, I could feel that same ache return. Nothing had changed. I was still Anna, the daughter who didn't earn a chapter in her mother's notebook, the one who didn't even deserve a proper seat at her sister's wedding. A chill ran down my back, not from the air conditioning, but from the truth. I lowered myself onto a cushioned bench by the window, right next to the coat rack, exactly where they'd planned for me to be. I looked down at the name card in my hand, the gold lettering catching the light. Then I turned to the glass behind me, catching my own faint reflection. Inside, the wedding carried on. Aunt. Glittering lights, flowing dresses, and perfect white flowers. Lena's brilliant smile and designer gown sparkled through the open doorway. But I remained there, on the outskirts of memory, affection, and belonging. If this dim hallway beside a coat rack was the place they believed I fit into, then maybe they had never truly known me at all. And, strangely enough, for the first time in my life, that realization didn't bring sadness. Instead, I felt something clearer, like stepping out from beneath years of shadows they had cast over me. I was no longer hiding beneath their approval, and I was finally ready to face the truth. I stayed seated on that bench, the glass at my back, showing a faint reflection of a woman caught between past wounds and present awakenings. Scenes from the last hour spun through my mind. Lena's sarcasm, my mother's cool disregard, and the sting of being treated like I didn't matter. They looped endlessly in my head, like a song stuck on a single verse. Anna. The sound of my name, spoken low and male, startled me. I looked up. Standing just a few steps away was Julian Barrett, the groom. He looked sharp in his tailored tuxedo, though his loosened tie and tousled dark hair told a different story, one of stress and distraction. A champagne flute dangled loosely from his hand. I rose slowly, straightened the hem of my dress, and offered a small nod. Julian. His gaze lingered on me, his brows drawn slightly. Seeing you here, like this, it doesn't feel right. A quiet laugh escaped me. Really? Because your family decided I'm not worthy of being seated inside the actual venue. He didn't respond. Silence stretched between us, thick with tension. Too near, strangers, somehow caught in a moment of unexpected honesty. Anna, Julian finally said, lowering his voice. Can I ask you something? I met his eyes. Go ahead. He hesitated. His fingers clenched faintly around the stem of his glass. Has Lena ever said anything to you about me? Anything strange? I tilted my head, studying him. Are you asking if I've heard her speak badly about you? Not just that, he said, pulling his phone from his jacket pocket. He stared at the screen for a moment, then shook his head. It's more than words. Lately, she's been acting different. Controlling, secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to see, and now I'm starting to realize something's off. I paused. Memories of Lena. As manipulative comments during past holidays swirled in my mind, I had never spoken up. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of fear no one would believe me. But the way Julian looked at me now, tired, uncertain, vulnerable, it pushed me to say what I never had before. You might want to sit down for this, I said quietly, because I don't think you truly know the woman you just married. He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice interrupted. One soft but unmistakably authoritative. If you still need convincing, perhaps your mother can make things a little clearer. We both turned. Standing at the far end of the hall was Margot Barrett, Julian's mother. She held a phone in her hand and regarded her son with eyes as piercing as glass. She wasn't someone who needed volume to command a room. Her elegance and precision were enough. Her navy gown flowed as she stepped forward, her platinum hair pinned in a sleek bun. Without a word, she handed the phone to Julian. Look, Julian took the device and began scrolling. I watched as confusion darkened into anger, and then something deeper, betrayal. His voice broke. She told her best friend she was training me to be the ideal husband, said I was predictable. That as long as she played sweet around you, Mom, she'd get this house. Margot gave a solemn nod. There's more. Messages to her stylist. Lena said that a few months after the wedding, she'd make you emotionally dependent, and then everything would be hers. Those were her exact words. I looked at Julian. His skin had gone pale. He stood stiffly, like his body was bracing against a storm he hadn't seen coming. I can't believe this, he whispered. Mom, how do you even have these messages? Margot turned to me briefly, then back to him. A friend of mine works at the design studio. She was helping Lena coordinate fittings. They sent a backup folder to my email by mistake when rescheduling. I opened it, and I read everything. Julian collapsed into a nearby chair, still gripping the phone like it might burn through his fingers. The air had gone still and sharp. I sat beside him in silence. Part of me hurt for him, but another part knew that the truth had waited long enough, and it had finally arrived. Margot stood quietly, then offered me a gentle nod. Thank you, Anna, for not turning away. I nodded back. I didn't need thanks. I only wanted the lies to end. And from this moment on, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. This wedding was no longer under Lena's control, and she would not be walking away with everything she thought she could manipulate into her hands. The private conference room on the resort's second floor felt like it belonged to dim taints. The hum of the air conditioning and a whisper of wind from a cracked window were the only sounds. Julian sat at the head of the table, staring into nothing. Margot stood behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder like she was the last solid thing in his world. I sat slightly to the right, hands folded in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. Even as my heart thudded so loudly I swore it might echo through the walls. The door creaked open. Lena entered with our mother, Deanna, trailing behind. Mom looked puzzled. But Lena, she didn't look confused at all. Her confidence was still there, wrapped around her like silk, though I noticed a flicker of unease in her eyes. "What's happening?" Lena asked, her tone too casual, too high-pitched. "Why are people being pulled from the reception?" Julian rose to his feet. But the look on his face had changed, no longer unsure, no longer questioning. He was certain now. From his suit pocket, he pulled out a white envelope and laid it on the table with deliberate precision. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Lena didn't respond. She stared at the envelope, unreadable. "It's a petition to annul the marriage," Julian said, voice calm and clear. "And just in case you're curious, I've already signed it." The room fell into silence. Our mother gasped, her hand rising to cover her mouth. Lena took one step back, her mouth tight, struggling to remain composed. "You're joking," she said finally, her voice thin and forced. "This has to be a joke." Margot spoke next. Her words were cool and sharp. "We've seen every message, Lena." "Mencha messes, Lena. Everything you wrote about Julian, about me, about this family. You can't talk your way out of this." Lena began, but Julian cut in. "I've read them too," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "You called my mother an old woman who just throws money at problems. You told your friend you'd have it all under control within 6 months. You said I was easy to manipulate, that all you had to do was act fragile and I'd fall for it. Want me to go on?" Lena didn't speak. She just stood frozen. I looked to my mother. She was still, pale, staring at her daughter as if she had finally met the real Lena for the first time. And then Lena whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "Those were jokes." Lena's voice trembled as she spoke. "It was just dumb messages between friends. Not serious." Margot responded with a sharp, bitter laugh. "And what about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that part of the joke too?" That was the moment the door opened again, and I saw my father, Richard, step into the room. His face was heavy with tension. I wasn't sure who had called him, but his arrival seemed to pull the atmosphere even tighter. The silence deepened. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice calm but piercing, eyes fixed directly on Lena. She didn't answer. He turned toward my mother. "Did you know about any of this?" Deanna shook her head weakly. I didn't think Lena was capable of something like this." "You never think," he replied, slowly and deliberately. "You've never stopped to really look at what's been happening." Then his gaze shifted to me. And for the first time in years, he didn't look away. "Anna," he said, his voice lower, "I'm sorry. Both my mother and I were caught off guard. My father had never apologized to me. Not once." Hearing those words left me breathless. "I've kept quiet for far too long," he continued. "I let things drift, let them spiral, and now I see you were right, about Lena, about all of it. I didn't know how to respond. A part of me had become so accustomed to being invisible that the sudden recognition felt unreal." Lena, snapping out of her stunned silence, erupted. "You're taking her side. Your daughter, the one you've always adored, is being thrown under the bus over a couple of silly texts." Julian stood, gripping the table edge. "Don't call them silly. Those weren't just words, Lena. That's who you really are. You don't get it." Lena shouted, her voice cracking. "I love you. I didn't want to lose my shot at a stable life." "Why is that so wrong?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call love? Drawing up a divorce plan before the wedding even began. She's lying." Lena spun toward me, her eyes sharp with rage. "This is all your fault. You've always been jealous. You turned Mom against me. You wanted this day ruined." I drew a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "Mtet. Lena, no one ruined anything but you. You made these choices. Don't blame the truth on everyone else." You've always been the outsider, Lena screamed. Always playing the perfect one to make Mom feel guilty. What do you want? To take everything from me? I shook my head. No. I just want what's real to be seen. That was when Mom stepped forward. She looked at Lena for a long, aching moment, her expression torn between confusion, sorrow, and disbelief. Lena, she said softly, her voice trembling, I can't protect you anymore. Lena stood frozen. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to speak, but no words came. Nothing she said now could undo the damage. She turned to face me again, but this time, what I saw wasn't anger. It was fear. And if without another, it a settered handed, and if without another setter, and a settered had to mitch me. Not fear of consequences, but fear because, for the first time, she understood that no one in the room would stand beside her. The room held its breath. Lena stood alone in that frozen silence, chest heaving, fists clenched tight at her sides. The perfectly applied makeup from earlier had smeared around her eyes. The once stunning white wedding dress looked suffocating now, tight, restrictive, stripped of its imagined grace. Her head ripped toward me, her eyes dark and seething. You always wanted to ruin me, she hissed. You never let me have one moment of peace, did you? I didn't reply. There was no more to say. And she didn't need an answer. Lena lunged forward, her footsteps echoing sharply against the tile floor as she charged toward me. I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid. Before she reached me, a steady arm slid between us like a shield. Margaret. That's enough, she said, her voice low but edged with steel. Lena stopped, stunned. Get out of my way, she barked. You've done enough. Margaret didn't move. If I let you cause one more disaster, that would be on me. Lena stood there, breathing hard, eyes scanning the room for someone, anyone, still on her side. But no one moved. Julian stood near the table, silent and unreadable. My father lowered his head, his brow deeply furrowed. My mother, once Lena's tireless defender, stood stiff, clutching her purse, her eyes pink and wet. Lena turned sharply and shoved past Margaret. Her heels clattered against the floor as she stormed out, the long train of her gown sweeping behind her like a ghost fleeing the scene. I thought she would vanish behind the conference room doors, but no. She pushed open the grand doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft string music played, where hundreds of smiling guests sipped champagne and took photos beside the flower arrangements. When Lena burst through, her breathing ragged, her hair undone, her eyes wild, everything came to a standstill. The music trailed, heads turned, voices dropped to whispers and then to silence. Those of us from the conference room followed quietly behind her. No one tried to stop her. No one wanted to. Lena stood alone in the center of the grand hall, right beneath the chandeliers that once made her feel like royalty. What was meant to be her most magical moment had instead become the setting for her public unraveling. You all think you can do this to me, she shouted, her voice cracking, echoing across the marble and the glass. You think you can humiliate me like this? She turned slowly, eyes scanning the stunned faces. I gave everything for today, every detail, every moment. I planned this down to the second. She took a few steps forward, trembling. And now, over a few messages, just a few meaningless words. You're all going to destroy me. No one responded. Not a whisper, not a sound. Then Julian stepped forward, his expression unflinching, his eyes locked on Lena. No one ruined you, Lena, he said, voice firm and even. You did that to yourself. Lena's head shook violently, her tears now streaking down her cheeks. You love me, Julian. Everything I did, every detail, was for our future. Margaret moved beside her son, her steps steady and deliberate. When she spoke, her tone was calm but chilling. I once hoped you'd want to be part of this family, but you never did. You didn't want to be a Barrett, you just wanted what the Barretts had. A quiet murmur stirred the crowd, soft but unmistakable. The tide was turning. Some guests looked around in confusion. Others set their drinks down, their eyes heavy with growing realization. Lena looked around in desperation, gasping for air between panicked breaths. She made this all up, she yelled, thrusting a trembling finger at me. Anna's always been jealous, always in the background, and now she's trying to drag me down with her. I stepped forward, calm, steady. My voice just loud enough to carry. I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight. Lena went still. The silence in the room was razor, thin, stretched tight. Even those who had once praised her now stood motionless, watching with eyes full of disbelief. And at Lena turned toward Julian again, clinging to whatever hope she had left. "You can't leave me," she said, voice trembling. "We're married. We made vows." Julian didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same white envelope, the one he had prepared hours ago. He held it up for her to see. "This is the annulment," he said, voice even and cold. "I've already signed it." The room held its breath. Margaret placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Come, Julian." As they walked away together, Lena remained frozen beneath the chandeliers and crystal lights. The same girl who had commanded every eye in the room was now alone, the illusion gone. Her power, the carefully constructed image, had crumbled, right there in front of everyone. A week after the wedding, I woke up alone in my Boston apartment. No flowers, no violin strings echoing through the air, no hushed judgment from the corner of a hall, just silence and peace. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Mom, her 9th call in 3 days. I didn't pick up. I had already heard everything I needed in the conference room, at the reception, and over the course of a lifetime filled with quiet neglect. I didn't need a forced apology or a tearful hug for show. I didn't need a curated family image to make up for years of being overlooked. That afternoon, while I stood by the coffee maker, another message arrived. This time, a text. "I know you're angry. I can't fix what's behind us, but I'd like to see you. Just the two of us. Dinner." I stared at it for a long time. The old me, the Anna from just a few years ago, would have said yes in a heartbeat. She would have ironed a soft blouse, arrived on time, smiled through the discomfort, and carried the weight of the silence with grace. She would have hoped, faintly, painfully, for her mother to say something simple. And Cannell. "I'm proud of you," or just, "I see you, but that girl didn't live here anymore." I put the phone down. No reply, no anger, just not needed. That evening, I took a walk along the Richard River. Tiny lights hung along the railing, reflecting across the still water. The scent of fall drifted through the air, and laughter from passers-by floated beside it. I sat on a stone bench and pulled an old photo from my wallet. Christmas, age 16. Lena front and center in a bright red dress, grinning like the world adored her. Mom beside her, hand placed proudly on her daughter's shoulder. And me, half hidden behind the tree, on the edge of the frame. I stared at that photo for a long while, then gently folded it and tucked it away. I no longer needed to wedge myself into a picture I was never invited into. Another call lit up my phone, this time my father. "Richard," I answered. Not because I was hoping for anything, but because he never called without a reason. "Anna," he said, his voice a little rougher than I remembered, quieter. "I'm not great with words. You know that." I said nothing. Just listened. But when you spoke that day, when your mother really saw Lena for who she was, I think for the first time she realized how alone you felt all these years. There was a long pause. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive us. Maybe you shouldn't, but I want you to know. I was wrong about everything, and I know that doesn't make it right, but I needed to say it." I closed my eyes. No tears, no sting, just a sense of calm, quiet but full. "Thank you, Dad," I said softly. "But I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." That night, I returned home and pulled the family photo album from the shelf. I didn't destroy it. I didn't burn it or tear out the pages. I simply placed it in a box, closed the lid, and stored it at the top of the wardrobe. That chapter was over, and I no longer needed to look back. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine. A journey I had always wanted to take, but never allowed myself, always staying close for some imagined obligation or family gathering. But this time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their approval. And I certainly didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because I finally understood, my value isn't determined by someone else's gaze. It's defined by how I choose to see myself. Family may be where we begin, but it's not always where we're meant to stay. True family is made of those who listen, who care, who don't make you fight just to matter. And sometimes the bravest choice isn't staying. It's walking away, not to escape, but to finally become who you were meant to be.